Hi there, my name is Zoe, and in this video I am going to be giving you the secret to having really beautiful belly dance hand movements. So when we see a dancer with really nice hand and wrist movements, it makes the dance look so much more beautiful and elegant, and it's something that can be very tricky for beginners to master, to get those hand movements looking very fluid and elegant. So I am going to be sharing with you the biggest mistake that I see beginners making when trying to get those nice flowing wrist circles and hand movements, and how we can fix it so that we get those really beautiful hand movements. Hand movements are super important because when we're watching a dancer, our eyes often are naturally drawn to the hands. The hands are so important for expression. So, if you want to bring your dancing to the next level, then this tip is for you. The biggest issue that I see beginners making when they are trying to get those nice wrist circles that we do all the time, or wrist movements, is they do something like this. Yeah? So you can see there's a difference between this movement and this movement, right? One is much more elegant and fluid, and this is just kind of floppy. It looks a bit lazy. So what is the difference between this and this? The main difference is that in one of these movements, the fingers are circling around the wrist, and what we want is to have the wrist be circling around the fingers. So it's a very subtle difference, but it's key to getting that beautiful belly dance movement. Wrist circling around the fingers instead of fingers circling around the wrist. So that is the key to keep in mind, but how can we do it? How can we get that beautiful wrist circle? This exercise that I'm about to show you is, I think, the best exercise for increasing our awareness of our wrist movement and our wrist flexibility, and really imprinting this movement into our bodies so that it comes naturally when we're dancing. So here's what you need to do. You're going to take one hand, you're going to take the fingertips of that hand in your other hand, and you want to hold your arm horizontal. Yeah, so the fingers, wrist, elbow are all more or less at the same level. And all you're going to do is move your wrist up and down. Just like this, very simple, up and down. Now what's really important and key to doing this exercise correctly is that the elbow should not move, or should move as little as possible, and the fingertips should not move, or should move as little as possible. So usually when I show people this exercise, a lot of the time they'll do it, but they'll do something like this, or like this. Right? So it's cheating. It's a lot easier. It requires a lot less work, but it's actually a subtle and really localized movement that we have right here in our wrist. So it's okay if it's a very small movement, but the key is to isolate, to really try not to move the elbow or the fingertips up and down, just that wrist. So you can think of it as like creating a sort of a mountain here with the wrist when it goes up, and then lowering it to create a valley. And if you've never done this before, you may not have much flexibility in your wrist. That's okay. The flexibility will come with time. But just do this exercise. Use a mirror to check, or a camera, whatever you want, but you need to have some feedback, I think, at the beginning to make sure you're doing the exercise correctly. Because if you're moving your elbow and your fingers, you're not going to get anything out of this exercise. The key is to really feel that wrist movement. And of course, we would do it on the other side. So again, moving that wrist up and down, trying to keep the elbow super still, keeping the fingertips very still. That's why we're holding them with the other hand. And really focusing on feeling that work in the wrist. You might even want to try closing your eyes to really feel that sensation. That can sometimes help. Just removing the visual feedback to really focus on those muscles. So that's the first part of getting that wrist circle. The second part is that you want to move the wrist very slightly towards you and away from you. So I'm going to show you. It might be a bit difficult to see. It's a very subtle movement. Here, the wrist is moving away and towards you. So it's moving sideways, horizontally, and this is going to be a very, very small movement, which is fine, but it's just going to help us with that circle. So again, on the other side, same thing. Wrist moving towards you and away from you, keeping everything horizontal. And then the next step would be to then combine the up and down with the horizontal movements into a small wrist circle. Yeah, it's not going to be big. That's fine. But what we really want to focus on is keeping the elbow and the fingertips as still as possible. There will be a little movement in them that's kind of impossible to avoid, but we want to make it as little as possible so that we can really focus on moving that wrist. And it's not easy. And that's why you don't see everyone having beautiful belly dance hands, because if you want to get those beautiful hands, you need to work at it. And it's not as simple as it might appear. So we try that on the other hand. And then once you've done that and you've really gotten that feeling into your wrist, then you can try without the fingers. And you might want to do it again just on one hand, on one side. And like I said, your fingers will move a little bit. The elbow might move a tiny, tiny bit, but the biggest movement should be in the wrist. We don't want to have this movement, right? We don't want to have the fingers going up and down, up and down. The fingers should always be pointing to the side. So if we have our arms out to the side and we're doing this, the fingertips are always pointing away from us. We're not letting the hands circle all the way around to get this kind of lazy, floppy circle. We want this controlled and yet fluid circle that is actually a lot of work and really requires some awareness of those wrist muscles, yeah? So you can try that exercise, and then once you get that circle, then you can even try moving your arms up and down with that circle. So let's put on some music and just drill that a bit to get it into our bodies. So that was a quick tip on how to improve your wrist circles and get beautiful belly dance hands. I really hope that you found it helpful and that this exercise improves your belly dance hands. If you like this video, please do give it a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Thank you so much for watching and happy practicing.